200 West Arrington in downtown Farmington. Find out more online at fmtn.org/civic center or at 505-599-1148. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, which is officially baby-friendly. This evidence-based initiative is designed to support mother-baby bonding and optimal infant feeding practices by upholding the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding. San Juan Regional Medical Center, officially baby-friendly and serving the Four Corners since 1910. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com.
Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, February 26th. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Micklin. Thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air in San Juan County, 103.3 FM over the air in Durango, Colorado. And, of course, you can listen anywhere from our website, KSJE.com. Special good morning also to our viewers who are watching us live this morning on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel. We're glad you're with us, everyone. Coming up in the next few moments, my conversation with members of the Farmington Municipal School District. Superintendent Dr. Eugene Schmidt is here standing by. Also, Bobby Newland is here, the Chief Financial Officer for the district. So stay tuned for that. Coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE. Then, of course, at the end of the hour, we'll be talking with Communications Professor Dr. Mike Hadabaugh. He'll be joining us from the Encouragement Lab. This week, Dr. Hadabaugh is speaking with me about being woke. We'll talk more about that coming up today at 8:50 a.m. right here on KSJE. Mick Hess is coming in next hour, Roving with the Arts, our classical music program. This morning, Mick is playing classical Persian music on the program. You'll hear that today on KSJE. And then it's our local and regional author program right on Four Corners. Tracy Hales-Vass is speaking with author Mary Uchtel-Kirchner about her latest book, Death of the Head. And you'll hear more about that today at 10:30 right here on KSJE. So stay tuned for that, everyone, as well. Don't forget about all of our accounts on social media to connect with us. Keep in touch with what we're doing here at KSJE, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and check us out on Instagram as well, everybody. Here's weather forecast. Some sunshine for the next several days. 44 for a high in Farmington today. 20 overnight tonight. It'll be warmer tomorrow with a high of 53, 54 and sunny by Friday, and partly sunny skies on Saturday with a high of 57 degrees. Well, let me introduce my guests who are here with us this morning, again from the Farmington Municipal School District. Superintendent Eugene Schmidt is here. Dr. Schmidt, good morning.
Scott, good morning. Good morning, Four Corners.
Thank you for being here. Also, Bobby Newland, Chief Financial Officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming in, and my apologies to all of you. I sound much worse than I feel, so thank you for bearing with me, everyone. But we're going to talk a little bit about some numbers and budgets and things like that this morning. And so, Dr. Schmidt, we'll start a little bit with you about kind of how things are looking for Farmington schools.
Yes, good morning again, and thank you for the opportunity to share thoughts with the community. We have a lot of work to do over this next month. It is an annual rite of spring to build a budget for the next school year. We try as an organization to wait for the results of the state legislature. Their 30-day session recently closed, and so now we have some initial ideas as to what pots of money may be coming our way.
You have a little bit of an idea, even though the governor has not yet approved the budget, but you at least know what those numbers may be.
Yes, yeah. For example, we know that the state will be investing $50 million in at-risk for children. And Farmington, because of its student demographics, high poverty, high numbers of Native American and Hispanic, we will be the beneficiaries of some of the investment in the future by the state legislature. So what we want to share with the community very quickly, and then I'll let Bobby join in, is that we're about to embark on a couple of meetings with the community. We have a committee of 60 people that consist of school staff, some parent representatives, and a number of business and community leaders that come together. We'll meet tonight for the first time as a kind of kickoff, and then we'll come back later in March. But by April, Ms. Newland will have a budget that we'll be presenting to the board.
I see. And so that budget committee gives you input on some of the things that you're looking at for the budget for the next school year?
Yes. We discuss the staffing needs, any materials, supplies, things like that that are needed in the schools at the various locations.
Got it. Okay, very good. And the first meeting is tonight?
Yes.
Yeah, and so, Scott, the process that we use is it's actually a very nice strategy. We have what we call mandatories. And so the state, for example, has in the budget set an average of a 4% salary increase for staff. And so that is viewed as a mandatory. When the state gives us this new pot of money, the first thing we do is make sure that the staff salary expectation is met. And then you go through a series of utility costs are going to go up, probably health insurance, maybe the employee's responsibility or employer's responsibility for the pensions of the future. And so you go from the mandatories, and then we go into that new category that we really look forward to discussing, and that's called the at-risk. That is a very specific, purposed money for the use for students in special ed, students who are mobile, students of poverty, students of Hispanic or Native American. So last year, for example, the district received about $2.5 million. The $50 million, they say, is in addition to what last year had. And so we're waiting for that definition, and as you described, we're waiting for the governor to sign the HB2, which would then release that funding. So when we look at risk, the challenge, what the state is looking for is what are you doing to improve the proficiencies of students in reading and math. And then they're going to be looking at how is your graduation rates. They're going to be looking at what kinds of factors prevent kids from going to school, the at-risk factors of, the things that interrupt a student's life. For this purpose, we'll be asking the question, will additional school nurses help the health of kids to stay in school? Early diagnosis of illness, maybe we can treat things or at least recommend treatments before a student gets ill and misses a day. We're also going to be spending a lot of time looking at the need for additional social workers. Kids come to school with trauma, and sometimes school might induce the trauma. And so we're looking at nursing, we're looking at social, emotional well-being of kids, and then we get into how can we support additional classroom instruction through the use of these monies. And so once you get past the at-risk, then we get to a category we call optionals. And so we will take care of the needs that the states mandate. We'll look at some recommendations for additional staffing for at-risk monies, and then if there's any money left over, then we can ask other kinds of questions about use of the monies. It might be additional textbooks and curriculum materials. I think one of the asks in the optional is how might we add an extra orchestra teacher to the district. So we have things layered, and so we will begin that conversation with our community tonight.
I see. And the community can then maybe give you some of their thoughts as well, if there's money left over and things like that, of what the priorities they would like to see for the district?
Yeah, really, it is a conversational tone where parent representatives bring their ideas. We actually met with principals and department heads a week ago, and they give their wish lists, which has helped generate some of the start of this conversation. But tonight is an opportunity for those parent and community representatives to listen and learn and perhaps offer thoughts as well.
I see. And again, many of these buckets of money that you get from the state can be spent only on certain things, right? And so that's some of those things that you talk about, that you put those up, spend those at the top first of where they need to be spent, correct?
Yes, and one of the curious things that the state is doing this year, it is targeted money. It must go into that at-risk student population. And with this year's infusion of money, HB2, the law that says here's where the money is, also has accountability factors. And we talked a little bit about those. For example, the state wants schools to meet or exceed 34% reading proficiency across the state. Farmington is already well above that, and so we will set different goals than the state. The state has a 75% graduation expectation rate. We are above that, and so our conversations will be how do we continue to meet or exceed. But there are some new ones that I think are interesting. And Bobby, I'll let Bobby talk about the 65 versus 75% money into the budget, because we have a slide later on that can talk about that a little bit. But one of the expectations is they want to reduce chronic absenteeism. And so a goal that they will be asking as a test, does this money have an impact or an effect, is can you improve attendance rate at school, especially in that category of chronic absenteeism. And that is identified by those students who have missed 10 or more days. And so
Very good. Well, interesting. Let's take a look at some numbers here. Mm-hmm. And the first screen that we have is from this current budget year, correct?
Yes.
And so if I call that up, and some of our viewers may have a hard time seeing the numbers on the screen, but we'll try to read them for you. But the top number there is maybe the one that's maybe the most, I guess, important,
yes.
And that is the total budget of the Farmington schools, which is a whopping $93 million. Is that right?
Yeah, and that is operational because the whole budget at the very bottom of the category is over $145 million. When you look at debt service, you look at capital construction projects, transportation, food service. There are many categories in the budget expectation, but this committee that Bobby will be convening tonight is specific to that operations at $93 million.
Yes.
So, Ms. Newland?
Yes, most of the other funds that are listed on that page, they are specific to programs that
can only be spent for certain things. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
I see.
Yes.
Right. So we can look down and see there's a transportation cost there. That's about $3.5 million.
Yes, about $3.5 million.
That's your school buses and
That's
costs
the
involved
two
with
and-
that, and all your
yes, the to
fuel
and from
and maintenance
busing.
and all that
Yes,
other
the
stuff,
bus
right?
drivers and-
Okay.
And that's actually quite important because we run over 70 buses.
Right.
And so, from the Colorado border, well past the Bisti-Napi.
Right. I don't know if the public knows just how far south the Farmington School District does go along 371
Yeah,
in that corridor. It really goes quite a ways.
It's a good 60 miles that we head south.
And you don't just cover the city limits, that's for
Yes,
sure.
down
So-
towards Crown Point.
Right. Very good.
yes.
And so the other things we could see too, instructional materials, I'll just read them down here, food services, athletics, non-instructional support, and what would that cover?
The athletics and non-instructional support, those are agency funds, and those are self-supporting. We do not get any funding from the state for those, or the federal government. Those are really self-supporting funds. The instructional materials and food service, those are categorized in the grants, with the grants, the federal and the state and local grants. And those are very specific to what they can fund.
I see. Okay.
Yes. And those funds are about 23% of our budget, the grants are.
Right. And we see the federal grants, flow-through grants, direct grants, state grants.
Yes, yes. And those are all the federal grants. We have many of those. We have Title I for low-income kids, IDEA for the special ed.
Multicultural,
Yes,
Native American
Title
Johnson
III.
O'Malley.
Yes. So we have many programs that are funded through federal grants and state and local grants also.
I see. And then we're kind of at the pink
Yes.
color at the bottom of the list there, and those are kind of your bonds and your capital improvements and some of those
and
funds, right?
Those are the monies that the voters
Approved.
approve,
Right.
yes. And those can be used for building, renovation, technology infrastructure. They are all very specific to what they can be used for, but most of it is for capital projects.
Right. But they are kind of dedicated to certain uses,
Yes.
as
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said.
specifically that improvement of our facilities,
Yes.
the maintenance and the remodel.
Yes, there are no salaries that come out of those.
Right. I
Yes.
guess that's the other thing that folks always wonder why you can build a building and not pay teachers more,
Yes.
but it's because that those buckets are separate for a reason.
Yes, yes, and they are very specific to their use.
Right. And you're prohibited from doing that, I know.
Yes. Oh,
so
yes.
that's true. And so for the next budget year, again, we don't quite know how those are going to look, but
Yes.
they would be somewhat, I would assume, similar to what we're seeing on the screen with this
Yes.
budget, with this current year budget.
Yes, they should be very similar, and hopefully with a little increase.
Right. And
to-
that would be the idea, hopefully, right?
Hopefully, yes.
Exactly. And so as we move forward here, your total budget, and so as we see in the green, the 64%, the biggest slice of that pie on the screen right now is operational.
Yes, and that's what we will be discussing.
Tonight?
Yes, at the Budget Committee, is that 64%, that district operational.
Got you.
And that's what, the district operational can be used for many expenses, and so we have choices to make with that, whereas everything else is so specific to what you can use it for.
Right. And Dr. Schmidt, again, those rules kind of apply, and you're asking the public to kind of, the members of this committee to give them their thoughts on how to spend some of this money?
Yeah, we'll be bringing the voice of the community and the local businesses, but also trying to help people understand and become vehicles of communication back. You know, because when you think, oh my goodness, we have 145 million, why don't we have more teachers? But as you said, the about 40% of the overall budget has a purpose that is designated. So the conversation tonight deals with that 93 million that we will be putting and trying to connect to the classrooms.
And I know another measure that districts like to, school districts use is how much of that money gets to the classroom. And so when you compare yourselves to other districts around the state, I'm sure the state probably has some suggestions of how much a percentage they would like to see make it to the classroom. And so for Farmington schools, the number is 80%?
It's almost 81%.
As we take a look here, right?
Yes. The suggestion, or the PED would like to see 65% of the budget in the classroom. And we take great pride in the fact that we budget over 80% of our budget into the classroom.
So that's what it's interesting about the new state budget, HB2. It does a call out. Previously, the mark was, or at least the aspirational goal was 65% connected to the classroom through teachers, through educational support, through that nursing, those social workers, the school administrations, how district supports the schools directly. The new marker is 75%. And so when we talk to our committee tonight, it is reassuring that Farmington has set a goal, even in the past, it's well above the state. And so part of our task will be, as we receive this infusion of new money, again, because think about this, our budget last year was 93 million, and we got 80% of that tied to the classroom. We're about to get maybe 7.5 million more. And so how do we make sure that that new monies, once again, is connected and can be tracked in some kind of transparent fashion back to the classroom?
You want to keep that percentage where it is, if not
higher. Yes.
And
yes.
and for a district the size of Farmington, is it a bit easier maybe for you all to be able to do this rather than maybe a smaller district that maybe doesn't have as much staff to do some of these extra things? Or I don't know if you've ever looked at that.
I feel very grateful that we are larger and that we have a little bit of wiggle room, that we are not looking to cut programs or staff or anything. The budget has been managed beautifully throughout the years, and I'm grateful for that too.
Right.
So Scott, you're right, because they're at some size in enrollment, there's a tipping point capacity, and that money can be shifted or focused. If you're in a smaller system, you may have to decide between, do I have an assistant principal or maybe an extra teacher? In Farmington, we are blessed with an enrollment of about 11,000 that allows us that flexibility of decision making, which again gives us tonight's committee work, that mandatory, that at-risk, and that optional opportunity for discussion.
Right. And so again, this is what you'll be talking about tonight a little bit, and keeping these numbers pretty close to where they are with the additional funds that you'll be getting. You're assuming that you'll be getting, and with good confidence from the state.
Yes, and so the strategy that Ms. Newland is bringing to this conversation is we have an idea, but for tonight's conversation, we're going to pretend as if that new money didn't exist, because we don't know exactly what that number is, and so we will have a conversation. This is how much money we have in our budget, because we do have a 7% cash reserve that by policy we try to maintain. So we'll talk about money we actually have, and then when we come back in March, when we actually know the real number, then perhaps we can go further down that list of things we'd like to add.
Right, and that real number would come from some of the things that you're assuming you'd be getting from the legislative session, and that is kind of
Yes.
on good faith that
Yes.
it's going to happen.
Yes, and as an example, the state has an average salary increase of 4%, so we are confident that they would have looked at last year's salary and then, did some extrapolation or algorithm that says, here's 4% more than you received last year. The at-risk monies is a new question, and Ms. Newland can explain what a unit value is, but every student represents a something in terms of money.
A budget, right, and in a formula, right, that
Yes.
is calculated by the state, sure.
And so perhaps explain how they're raising that, but we don't exactly know what the raise will be.
Yes. The SEG, the State Equalization Guarantee, which the district is really funded by.
All districts.
Yes,
Right.
in the state, yes. There are formula factors, and there are different groups that have a higher multiplier than others, and special ed, teachers with more education and experience, and of course the at-risk students. Those have a little higher multiplier, and that adds a little weight to the unit value.
Sure.
The overall money that they will provide
Right.
to us.
Yes.
And that goes into that calculation with the state as to how much money Farmington will get, Aztec
Yes.
will get, Bloomfield will get. It goes district to district.
Yes. It's all based on the 8120-day enrollment count, and then at that point, then we start breaking out the groups with the multipliers, and that's where most of our funding comes from.
Sure. And so when you try to set a raise for your employees, that's one of your bigger chunks of your budget is your
Yes.
salaries and benefits
Yes.
for your employees, correct?
Yes, I believe that it's the salaries and benefits are just about
I was
86%.
going to say well above 85.
Yes, of our entire budget.
So increasing that by 4% is a
That's a lot,
is a
yes.
chunk, right?
Yes.
And the idea being too that I've heard that sometimes the state doesn't always give you enough money to cover 4% for all of your employees, and they're trying to do a better job of maybe giving you the money that you need to do this
Yes,
state mandated
yes.
increase.
Yes.
And I would say that that's where Farmington is in a better position because of the size of our staff.
Right.
The size of the student enrollment. We generate more money than some of our neighboring districts who had to make the decision, do we use at-risk monies to help complement teacher salaries?
I see. Got you. And so with some of these other things that we're looking at from the latest legislative session then, the raises is one. Some other more money for textbooks then? Is that what we're seeing?
And that's one of the curiosities we're hoping to see. Last year, they just put textbooks into the SEG without really making its own line item. This year, there's I want to say about $30 million that is set aside for the purposes of textbook adoptions, and that's important to Farmington because we're looking at a math adoption. So when you have 11,000 kids and the textbook may cost $90, this is an important decision that's about to be made. And then, waiting in the wings a couple years from now is a whole English language reading programs, and so the decisions that we will be making this year really position us to make other kinds of decisions in the future.
I see. And these accountability measures that we see on the screen, Dr. Schmidt, I think you
Yes.
mentioned them earlier too, but these are some of the things too that you're being asked to achieve in the next year?
Yes, I just took a sampling, and so for those who are listening,
Right. Radio audience, we're talking to you.
Right, right in the state budget, there's a section of accountability in that they, with the investment of this money in our school system, and expect a 34% proficiency or better for reading and math. We have met that. In fact, last year's proficiency was over 40%, but math is a question because our proficiency last year in math was 23%, and so that is a goal that is an aspirational stretch goal. 75% or more of the budget connected to the classroom, we have met that test for several years, and I expect with Bobby's guidance to the committee over these next couple of meetings that we will continue to meet that. 75% graduation rate, that is a test that we're meeting, but not in all schools. We have work to do at Rosinante, which is our alternative, and I'm hoping one day will be our first choice school, but we have San Juan College High School, for example, that will be graduating their first class ever.
That's right.
In May. And so...
Go Griffins.
Yes, go Griffin. And so we expect that. But in fact, I'm going to predict...
Their rate is pretty high.
Maybe 100%. That's
right.
what I'm hoping.
It's pretty close.
So
right.
those things will help the overall district average. And curiously, we parted company, you remember, a year ago with the Virtual Academy.
That's right.
That had historically not had a very high graduation. So 75% I feel good as an aspiration. And then we talked a little bit about the raising or reducing the chronic absenteeism of those top most frequent missers of school.
Okay, that's a good way to say that, but you're right. And so again, that's another thing that you'll be looking at in the coming year.
Yes, which is again at-risk monies. How do you support kids who don't go to school?
Sure.
To get to school.
Right. And Dr. Schmidt, before we leave this part of the conversation, from your experience in dealing with the state legislature, I mean, how would you grade this 30-day session for public education? Did they do pretty well? Obviously, it's maybe easy to do when there's a lot of revenue coming into the state rather than cutting budgets. You're adding to them. Does it seem like they're listening to superintendents and districts around the state of what your needs are?
Yeah, there were several things that I thought were really important. And early childhood education, a new permanent fund has been set aside for early childhood education, and that's really Birth to 5, that allows Farmington at some point within this next year to study, do we want half-day preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds or all day? And so that will be a question that we will be talking about. The state is...
And that's something the governor's already signed, I believe.
Yes.
So that's already in the books and will be happening.
Yes, one that Farmington will be interested in is extended learning. There's a K-5 Plus initiative that allows elementaries to choose to go an extra 2 or 25 days. Last year, Apache Elementary in Esperanza piloted that. I'm expecting that McCormick, Bluffview, Animas will be joining in that conversation about a 205-day school year. So extended school year was a good thing. I think that the state's focus on at-risk monies, which you and I know, Scott, is a direct result of the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit that the state lost, that says you must invest more into at-risk student populations. And so we're going to do some nice work with that money. So I would say of the three, the early childhood, the extended learning, the opportunities for at-risk kids, and certainly we all welcome a salary increase from time to time. And so, you know, those are my positives, and I'll stay out of the politics of red flag laws and other kind of things.
No, I understand. Well, I completely understand why you would do that, but it looks like a good budget for schools.
School's very helpful.
And I know, you know, the public is concerned about, you know, the amount of money that gets spent on public education, and so they want to see results. And I think your data shows that your students are certainly showing that they are learning and that they are achieving and rising to the challenge of these bars that you set.
Yes, I do agree. We have a great set of teachers. We have a great set of leaders. Farmington is above the top 10 largest districts. We are leading in those proficiencies, and that is a challenge and an expectation that we'll continue to rise to.
And that's a great segue into our next topic, which is because of all the success that I think you and your students and teachers have had, you're being asked to kind of talk about it at different conferences and things like that around the country. And so there's some news to report about that.
Yes, two, actually three. There is curiosity in what Farmington is doing to raise proficiency rates faster than some of our demographically comparable peers. And so we just recently returned a small group delegation, Robin Hoffman, who is my school board member, Deputy Superintendent Valdez, Executive Director of Curriculum, Nicole Lamson, and a data school improvement specialist, Nate Pierantoni. We traveled to San Diego to present at the National Superintendent's Conference. And as a compliment to the district, about a week before that San Diego conference, we got a call from Washington, D.C., asking if Farmington would join in a panel of experts on early childhood reading. And so Nicole Lamson, my executive director of curriculum, joined 4 other superintendents from places like Indiana and Kansas to present as an expert in reading. Similarly, we were across the convention center talking about how the central office supports principals in becoming instructional leaders in their school. So that's one example. And if I can share another. Several years ago, the school district went through a process called Advanced Ed Accreditation. And from that, we demonstrated that if you build systems or structures, for example, if you have strong professional learning communities of teachers, if you do things like teacher pursuing excellence, principal pursuing excellence, those are systems or structures that cause student achievement to rise. Well, we were the focus of a national case study that the draft version has just been released. It'll actually be published this summer, but 2 examples about how at a national level, national stage, Farmington is being asked to share how you're doing what we do. It's really exciting.
Very exciting. Well, congratulations. And unfortunately, we are out of time this morning, everybody, for our conversation. But thank you very much, Dr. Schmidt, as always, for coming in. And Bobby Newland, thank you for being here to talk a little bit about numbers and how this gigantic budget gets put together every year. So appreciate it very much.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes.
Thank you both.
We'll see you in a month.
We will see you next month, that's for sure. My guest from Farmington Schools here on KSJE, everyone. Back with more in just a moment. The time right now is 8:41.
This program on KSJE is supported by Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation, providing a competent, innovative, and caring team of professionals to serve wealth management, trust administration, employee benefit plans, retirement planning, and estate settlement needs. Find out more about Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation at 505-5